Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football is brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors, O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana, Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, and WAND.
Might not have been the prettiest thing, but it's a W in the long run.
They're 1-0, and that's all that matters, says Coach Beckman. Illinois beating SIU 42-34 in Week 1. It wasn't pretty, but it brings us to Week 2 and the game at home against Cincinnati. Welcome to Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana. I'm Matt Lovelace, host of Inside the Illini Big Ten Football, the show that will take you inside the Illini football program. We'll take a look back at some of the footage you just saw a little more in depth with the Illini football team, what happened in their own words, plus looking ahead at the game against Cincinnati. What do we know about the Bearcats besides the fact that they whooped up on another Big Ten team this week, plus a look across the entire Big Ten highlight reel from Week 1. And of course, we've compiled the greatest minds in Illini football coverage. And Lauren Tate, a friend of the show, a contributor last year, making his season debut. Lauren, give us some initial thoughts on what we saw last week.
Well, I think that as we'll see across the country, second games don't always reflect what we see in the first game. There's an area that Illinois can improve on, obviously, and I think
just one.
Well, I think that definitely they need to get some pass rush,
right,
and they need to find some way to stop the passes, the deep passes. I mean, they completed, obviously. They allowed SIU to complete too many passes,
right,
and they've got to improve. I think once you get that area, I think that things could look a lot different.
Week 1 games against FCS, interesting to evaluate, I guess. Steve, what were your thoughts?
Well, I think a couple of things that came out that we talked about going into the season. You touched on the pass rush and the secondary, both showing a lot of need for improvement. On the bright side, Nathan Shieldhouse looked pretty steady,
right,
in a season opener with a career-high 416 yards passing. Defense needs to shore up a little bit. Maybe the heat had something to do with it last week. It's going to be warm again today, maybe not quite as bad.
Nate Shieldhouse said after the game, he said they played an FCS team, and it wasn't pretty, and we all talked about that. But he said, well, at least we're not Kansas State. I'm sure Kansas State would love to be in our shoes right now. FCS teams had a great weekend.
Really
What's going on?
Well, I think North Dakota State just kind of started it for everybody. And then, of course, Eastern Illinois coming through against San Diego State, which now plays Ohio State. I don't know if San Diego State was looking ahead or what, but it was an amazing weekend in that respect. And the interesting thing to me about it is the fact that in a couple of years, the Big Ten has got a policy, will have a policy, of not playing any FCS schools.
Yeah, that news really came out this week, and that'll be interesting to see how they schedule.
And that means a lot to those schools because they make a lot of money. For instance, SIU got $350,000 for playing Illinois.
Yeah.
They won't be able to do that anymore. They won't be able to have a game like that where they can get that kind of money.
Well, I think Eastern ended up making a pretty big paycheck for being invited to San Diego State to whoop up on the Aztecs out there.
Yeah, they look really good. We'll learn more about that game a little bit later on in the show, but that was a very impressive win for the Panthers.
Right. Absolutely. And now a couple of Illini topics real quick as we move ahead. We saw Aaron Bailey play a little bit. We saw Riley O'Toole. What were your thoughts on the use of them?
My basic thought was that was unnecessary, particularly with O'Toole. It's okay to bring in. They didn't want to run Shieldhouse out of the quarterback position. He didn't have a single call all day in which he was to run. They're trying to protect him. So I think it's okay to bring in probably Bailey for that kind of a situation for short yardage to try to run. But I think we'll see Shieldhouse run before the season's over.
Right.
I think they went to the deep freeze a little too soon. Deep freeze, maybe not the right word on a day like that, but I think they got a little conservative a little sooner than they should have by bringing O'Toole in and then had to bring Shieldhouse back in the ball game. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out today.
Well, Coach Beckman had some interesting comments after the game regarding the decision to play O'Toole. We'll talk about that next because up next, that slow beginning, but then kind of an exciting middle for Illini fans and then a downright scary ending. We'll talk about what happened against Southern Illinois as Inside the Illini Big Ten football rolls on. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten football. Head coach Tim Beckman talked about it earlier this week. There's a lot more balance in college football from level to level, FCS and FBS. Oregon State and Kansas State, a couple of teams getting beaten by those FCS schools, and the Illini hosting one. We'll take a look back at the highlights with SIU. 42,000 showed up at Memorial Stadium hoping to see this progress the coaching staff has been talking about. And for all the offseason changes, something looked very familiar. Let's flash back to opening day last season. First drive of the game, the fourth play, Nathan Shieldhouse high and deep to Ryan Langford, a 64-yard touchdown. And coming back to this last Saturday, this time it was the first play from scrimmage. Shieldhouse to Langford again, a 52-yard pickup.
We knew what we were going to throw in the first play, and then I thought he threw a great shot, on the line.
A little tradition, had to do it one last first time.
That would lead to a field goal, then a whole bunch of nothing. But the fortunes changed in a hurry, and the Illini offense really started to heat up. Josh Ferguson did most of the work here, but he and Shieldhouse connected on a 53-yard passing play as the sophomore running back sped in for a receiving touchdown. Illinois scored 22 straight points and appeared to be on their way to the rout that they needed. The Illini and Salukis traded scores in the third quarter. True freshman Aaron Bailey getting his first career touchdown, followed by the highlight of the day, D'Angelo Bentley. The defender and specialist went from goal line to goal line, a 100-yard kick return for the score that tied the longest in program history.
We spoke about that all week, and the kickoff return team, we believe that we could make that happen and put our names on something.
But SIU chipped away. A 22-point lead for Illinois was cut to 15, then to 8 when Corey Faulkner hit McCoyle Pruitt for a short touchdown. And SIU had a shot. Less than a minute to go, a 4th and goal at the Illinois 3, and Faulkner overthrew it. A turnover on downs, Illinois kneeled and took a big sigh of relief.
We gave up some big plays, and then we turned the football over. And you can't turn the football over in any game.
I didn't see any panic, when it came to the sideline. They knew what to expect, and, they knew what our red zone calls were.
You love to learn from wins, even if they're ugly, even if they're not, exactly what you expected.
This team needs to learn how to win and learn how to feel after a W. And that's what I told them in the locker room.
Guys, we saw Nate's performance there. We talked about 416 yards, tops in his career, top 10 single-game performance in Illini history, Big Ten Player of the Week award. It was against SIU, but Nate looked like he was in pretty good rhythm there.
Well, he threw the ball well, and I was interested. They came out throwing on the very first play.
Yep.
A deep pass to Langford and kept throwing all day. And I wanted to see more running game, but I think that Bill Cubitt pointed out that if the other team's going to pile up the line, they're going to throw over it, and that's what they did.
Did we think Cubitt's going to throw a lot more? Is this going to be a pass-heavy offense under him, Steve?
I think it will be. I think they'll throw more, and I think a lot of folks were anxious to see what the first play would be. I talked to Ryan Langford after the game, and they had that scripted out and planned out since midweek, and
right.
It came about like they hoped it would, 52 yards over the middle, and Langford had 6 catches, 115 yards, and the other bright spot, Lauren, I thought was Josh Ferguson out of the backfield catching the football.
Not only that, but he got off the only really good run they had all day, and the blocking just wasn't there for the run, but he had a 34-yarder, and I thought he showed a lot of ability and a lot more ability in this game than Donovan Young.
We also saw Aaron Bailey play just a little bit, a couple of snaps, but he scored a touchdown. He got a first down at a time when the Illini needed it at the end of the first quarter. Were we intrigued, excited about what we saw from him and his abilities? Too early?
I know he's a big, strong guy. Whether he's a quarterback or not will depend on how he throws the ball.
Right.
And I don't know. As the season goes along, we're going to see more of him. Okay, I mean, I'm sure of that. But in games like this where it's in the balance, it's okay to bring him in for a play, but I want to see Shieldhouse in there taking the snaps if it's under pressure.
That was an interesting topic after the game, who was going to come in at quarterback. Riley O'Toole saw some time. I guess initially, Steve, let's talk about what we saw from Riley.
Well, I thought going in that O'Toole was the definite number 2 guy. I don't think he helped his case. I don't know if he hurt it much because, again, we haven't seen Bailey pass the football. We know O'Toole can throw the ball. He had more TD passes last year than Shieldhouse did, but who's number 2 and who's number 3, I don't know that it matters at this moment.
It's an awful small sample.
Yeah.
The big mistake he made was getting the delay penalty when they made 8 or 9 yards on the first play and could have made a first down, and got set back, and then he winds up fumbling, and of course that made it an awful scary finish.
Yeah, the stat sheet doesn't look good. 1 for 1, but that one pass was for -1 yards, and he had the fumble. back in their own territory. So the question after the game was, what was the thought process on putting in O'Toole? And Coach Beckman's answer was, well, I told him yesterday that we would play him. What do we accept that response as it is?
Well, maybe in that game, but I don't think it works today.
Right.
It doesn't work in a game like this, or probably any other game. You got to go with the guy that you think gives you the best chance to win the game.
The problem is if you got a passing offense and you're trying to run the clock, how do you do that? Because if you throw an incomplete pass, it stops the clock. So you want to run. They got a problem there. They got to develop some running game to finish out games.
I don't think you can argue that putting in O'Toole definitely changed the momentum of that game and kind of how his drive stalled. Well, we've talked about the game against SIU, but some intriguing matchups across the Big Ten landscape. We'll talk about Ohio State, see how they did. Some other the scares a couple of teams took, and the beatdowns another one took. Both divisions were 5-1 over the weekend against some of those FCS schools. We'll take a look at the highlights as Inside the Illini rolls on.
The Inside the Illini weekly MVP highlights the top playmaker for the Illinois football team from the previous week, and no doubter here, senior quarterback Nathan Shieldhouse lit up the highlight reel. An air attack under new coordinator Bill Cubitt. Shieldhouse completed 78% of his passes for a career-high 416 yards to go with 2 touchdowns in the win over SIU. This week, he was named the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week for the second time in his career.
Welcome back to the show. Well, Illinois got a bit of a scare, but I'm sure a team like Purdue would have preferred a scare to the beatdown that they got. Over the next couple of segments, WAND's Eric Harold will give us a look at the highlights around the Big Ten from Week 1, starting with the Leaders Division.
Thank you, Matt. Ohio State, number 2 in the country, and they are once again bowl eligible. Urban Meyer's crew, Week 1. Let's see what they can do. Braxton Miller drops back in the shotgun, looks down the field. Devin Smith, 47-yard touchdown. Buckeyes lead 8-0 after getting the 2-point conversion. Later in the first quarter, Braxton Miller hands off to Jordan Hall, and he is gone. Nobody within 10 yards. Touchdown, Ohio State. They go up 16-0. Second quarter, Buckeyes pouring it on. Jordan Hall takes a handoff again and again, takes it to the end zone, almost untouched. Buckeyes roll in this one 40-20. Number 23, Wisconsin, hosting UMass. First quarter, no score, Wisconsin. Joel Stave doesn't like what he sees, takes it in himself. Badgers up by a score in the first quarter. Later, 10-0 in the second. Melvin Gordon takes a hand up, busts through a hole, and no one is going to take him down to the 30, to the 20, to the 10. Touchdown Badgers, they lead 17-0. Third quarter, they would add to their score. First and 10. Joel Stave has plenty of time, fires a 65-yard pass downfield to Jared Abradaris. Wisconsin goes up 24-zip, and they would roll in this one 45-0. Rounding out the Leaders Division, Indiana destroys Indiana State 73-35, led by their quarterback, Nate Sudfeld. The Nittany Lions roll past Syracuse 23-17, led by Christian Hackenberg. And Purdue gives Illinois a scary preview of what Cincinnati is capable of as they are blown out in Week 1, 42-7.
Well, guys, looking at Week 1, we saw Ohio State, maybe as we were watching the Illinois game, seeing Buffalo put up a few points against the Buckeyes there. But any concerns over that game? Braxton Miller looked like he was decent.
Oh, I don't think there's any concerns at all. I think Ohio State's in fine shape. They go from here. Their schedule is made out for them. I would look for them to be undefeated, perhaps going into November.
They've won 13 straight now with the 12 they won last year, and they were up big on Buffalo. I'm sure they just pulled the starters in the second half and took advantage of giving some young guys a chance to play. But I don't think anybody would be concerned about that win over Buffalo. It could have been bigger, but it didn't need to be.
They play San Diego State today. So they're licking their chops a little bit after seeing what Eastern did to them.
Can you imagine that Hoke was out there just a couple years ago?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, San Diego State's come apart at the seams.
Yeah, I don't think Ohio State's too worried about San Diego State. I'm not sure that Ohio State's too worried about any of the games on their schedule before the Big Ten starts. But they're going through the motions, and they're still getting votes. Number 2 in the country in one poll, number 3 in the other.
Right. Wisconsin now, big win over UMass. I think the thing that caught my eye, we know of a couple of the running backs, Melvin Gordon, James White, we know their names. But Corey Clement, a freshman, 101 yards. They had 3 rushers with over 100 yards. Incredible game.
The thing about it is, once you break down the opponent, it doesn't matter which running back, I don't think, is in the game. And if you can't get to the line of scrimmage, as it was the case with Illinois, it didn't matter who the running back were either, because there's no holes. But Wisconsin creates holes, don't they?
They've got a lot of guys Illinois would like to have along that offensive line, and it seems like all they do every year is just plug some new guys in. They're all 6'6", 320, and very good.
And when the offensive line isn't working well, what do? Fire the coach. They fired the offensive line coach early season last year.
Right.
Well, Gary Anderson, I don't know if he'll have as quick a trigger, but he definitely inherited a lot there. 9 yards per carry for a team that attempted 44 rushes in that game.
That tells you an awful lot about the line.
Yeah, exactly. Penn State, 23-17 win over Syracuse. Hackenberg got a first look at the freshman quarterback for Penn State. What do we think?
Great statement by Bill O'Brien. We had some problems. It's my fault. If I call better plays, we'll do better. I couldn't believe that. Now, you have to have an awful lot of confidence in yourself and your backing to make a statement like that, and you have to be pretty good to make that statement.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to work on calling better plays this week, and that's after he put a true freshman in the game at quarterback. So he's taking the responsibility there, but I was very impressed with him.
Well, yeah, Hackenberg, 22-31, close to 300 yards, a couple of interceptions with a couple of touchdowns, but he was pretty solid. They host Eastern Michigan. Indiana, 73 points. They earned the award for the highest score of a Big Ten team. But we know 80. This team can score a lot of points.
They could have had 80. Right. They weren't even trying to score the last time. But I don't know. We'll find out as Indiana plays better opponents just how good that offense is. But we know it's pretty good. It was good last year.
Yeah, it was very good. The defense is the big question.
That's the question. We know that the offense is good, but can they stop anybody good?
Right.
We'll start to find that out pretty soon. They're going to have trouble with Navy today just because of the different offense the Navy runs.
Right, a lot of high scores in Bloomington this year. And then Purdue, last Leaders Division team, of course, they lost to Cincinnati, outgained 425 to 226 in yardage to 65 rush yards. Darrell Hazel looks like he's got a project on his hands.
Well, he's got a real problem because they had some offensive communication problems in the game. They only had 28 plays that they ran in the first half, and he's trying to get that straightened out. He used the word verbiage. The quarterback verbiage wasn't good. I don't know what that means exactly, except that everybody was not on the same page.
Right.
And we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but I think Cincinnati's defense is really good.
Right. In the communication breakdowns, Lauren was talking about fumbles, guys weren't in the right places, handoffs, there wasn't a running back there to give it to, a whole lot of mistakes in the Purdue game, so we'll see how the Boilermakers grade out this season. Well, next we'll talk about the Legends Division. I think there were a couple scores that caught your eye when you saw them and went, well, this might have been a little closer than I thought. We'll take a look at the highlights next on Inside the Illini Big Ten Football.
The Inside the Illini Play of the Week is sponsored by your local Anheuser-Busch distributor, Gagne Distributing. Hard to pick against history here, tying the longest kick return for a touchdown in Illinois history. 100 yards went D'Angelo Bentley untouched. It gave the Illini a 39-17 lead at the time, something that's been missing from the Illini repertoire for a while now. It's the first kick return for a touchdown for Illinois since 2008.
Hi folks, welcome back to Hickory River Smokehouse here in Urbana. Smells delicious like barbecue as it does every week. But we're halfway through our Big Ten coverage and we have to keep talking football even though my stomach's growling here. Mountain West and WAC did look pretty good against a couple of Legends Division teams in the Big Ten. We go back to Eric Harold for the highlights.
Thank you, Matt. Legends Division, number 17, Michigan, taking on Central Michigan. Devin Gardner getting the start, the first game of the Devin Gardner era. Just his second pass does not find his intended receiver. Chippewas pick it off. Rough start for Devin, but he would come back. This time he buys some time with his feet, eludes the defense, runs outside, looks downfield to Drew Dillio. Dillio takes it into the open field, takes it down to the 30, to the 25, taken down. Michigan rolling. Later, 1st and 10. Devin Gardner. He's looking around. He can't find anyone open. Uses his feet. Breaks it up the middle, looks to the left, and takes it into the end zone for 7. They win 59-9. Nebraska leading Wyoming in the second half. Martinez hands off to Amani Cross up the middle. He's going to be tackled. No, he's not. He rolls out of it, keeps on chugging, finds the end zone. Nebraska widens their lead. Third quarter, Taylor Martinez looks left, finds Jamal Turner in the end zone. Initially called incomplete, but it was a touchdown upon further review. But Wyoming would make this interesting later. They're within 3, last play of the game. Brett Smith heaves it. No good, out of bounds. Game over. Nebraska holds on. They defeat Wyoming 37-34. Number 22, Northwestern taking on Cal. First quarter. Cal lines up for a field goal. Trickery afoot as Vincent D'Amato takes a direct snap, passes to Jackson Bouza. That's a touchdown for Cal. They take the lead 7-0. This game would be back and forth. Third quarter. Cal has the lead, but Goff gets pressured, gets picked off by Northwestern. Colin Ellis takes it 56 yards in for the touchdown, and they would win 44-30 over Cal. Elsewhere in the Legends division, the Michigan State Spartans take down Western Michigan 26-13. Minnesota rolls past UNLV 51-23, and the Iowa Hawkeyes suffer a huge Week 1 loss to Northern Illinois 30-27.
And guys, we'll just kind of start in order of the rankings, I guess, starting with Michigan, 59-9 win over Central Michigan. We did see Fitzgerald Toussaint. He broke his leg last fall, but he was back. He looked solid, didn't look like he got a ton of snaps, but what do we think from the Wolverines?
Oh, the Michigan is going to really be good this year. I look for, I'll predict this later, but I think they're going to beat Notre Dame and roll. I think Michigan is back in. They've got a coach that kind of fits what they want to do, and I think Michigan is on a roll.
Yeah, when you put up 59 points against an overmatched opponent, you don't learn a lot other than they've got some players. They've always got players there, and I think tonight's game against Notre Dame will be fun to watch.
Is Devin Gardner the second coming of Denard Robinson?
Oh no, different kind of
right,
player
exactly.
altogether. I mean, but he did take over late last season when Denard had problems. As you might remember, Denard threw 4 interceptions in the first half of the Notre Dame game last year. That was the first time they'd lost to Notre Dame in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame had a great defense. I don't mean to take that away from them, but I think what they have now is less of a runner, more of a passer at quarterback.
A couple interceptions, obviously a guy who's got to grow a little bit in the system. Nebraska beating Wyoming, barely beating Wyoming. A Cowboys team that's probably a lot better than we're going to give them credit for on this show, but Huskers outgained by the Cowboys. Concern there?
Well, we talked on our first show this season about defensive questions in Lincoln. I think those questions are still there. I don't know that they solved any of those in that first game.
Lauren, any thoughts on that game?
I thought Wyoming moved the ball extremely well, but didn't win the game. But it gave me, I was encouraged by a couple of things. Number one, I think that Illinois should be able to move the ball against Nebraska now. Everybody else does. Mm-hmm. And I saw Michigan State with a team that didn't pass the ball well. So I see holes in those, I see weaknesses on those teams that maybe Illinois can capitalize on. We'll see.
Let's talk about Northwestern beating Cal at Cal by a couple of touchdowns. Despite some issues, King Coulter going down with a concussion, the QB there. The defense was on the field for 99 plays. Were we impressed with what Northwestern was able to do out west?
I thought that Simeon meant more passing, probably, because he's more of a passer than maybe Coulter is. Coulter runs more. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they've got 2 quarterbacks, and they'll both be back this week, so I think that, against Syracuse, that they should be able to move the ball again. And I think Northwestern has made strides that they deserve some recognition. I think they have to take them seriously.
I agree. I was impressed with them going out there, playing a late game on the road, first game of the season, going west. Big Ten teams historically don't do that very well. Fell behind early in the game and then kind of poured it on. I thought that was a good win.
All the injuries that Northwestern had in the game sparked an interesting discussion this week. Is that how you slow down the no huddle? You have guys injured on the field, and it seemed to work for them for the most part.
Were they really hurt? Do we know?
No comment.
That's exactly what you're getting
in
Evanston.
Yeah, absolutely. Michigan State beating Western Michigan 26-13. Every article I read about the game said Andrew Maxwell was ineffective.
Yeah, and Cook wasn't any better. Cook was 6 out of 16 when he came in.
Right.
I don't think they know who the quarterback is.
And they had to capitalize on 3 interceptions, did Michigan State.
They got a good defense.
Right. As they usually do. All right, we got to wrap up with Minnesota and Iowa. Minnesota beating UNLV. Learn anything about Jerry Kill's Gophers?
No, they can. They put some points up against those guys. I was more interested in the NIU Iowa game.
Yeah.
Actually, I picked NIU to win that game based on the better quarterback.
Yeah, and that's the way it turned out.
In Jordan Lynch.
It was close, though.
It was.
A late mistake there by Iowa. Well, up next, we're going to our weekly segment, Illini and the Pros. There's one NFL regular season game, but 30 teams do have to kick off on Sunday and Monday. We'll take you to our last preseason installment of Illini and the Pros next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten Football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten Football. Now, normally when you see a number 2 on an Illinois jersey, you're thinking Nate Shieldhouse, the guy who's worn it for just a couple of years here. But there is a number 2 that's becoming harder to ignore as Noah Newman takes us to our Inside the Illini Spotlight, taking a look at D'Angelo Bentley.
He's one of these so-called young pups, but he's quickly becoming a big dog, especially on special teams. In his first career start, D'Angelo Bentley returned this kick 100 yards for a touchdown, the longest by any player in school history.
That moment was great. It was my first collegiate touchdown, so I was very excited. I know it was the first one since 2008 or 2007, so we spoke about that all week, and the kickoff return team, we believe that we could make that happen and put our names on something.
It's not really surprising that Bentley knows how to return a kick when you consider he learned how to from one of the best. Former first-round pick Ted Ginn Jr.
I actually talked to Ted maybe a couple weeks ago when he took the punt return back. He just told me, stay in the film room. He always says, watch the film, just learn what they're doing, learn what they're trying to do to you to prevent you from scoring.
Bentley and Ginn Jr. both went to Glenville High School in Cleveland, Ohio, where Ginn's father, Ted Sr., is the head coach.
Coach Ginn is a great coach. He puts us on a step where we have to perform, and I think that just makes the players better.
I think coming from a great program that he comes from, I think he has an understanding of what it takes to win. He's been part of a culture that, that's what they know, and they understand the work ethic that goes into it. And he's really bringing that same work ethic here.
Well, guys, one of those players that got some limited action during the season last year, played in all 12 games, but only had 11 tackles. D'Angelo Bentley, is he a guy we're going to see kind of grow into the quarterback position a little bit?
Well, I think he's going to be a key cornerback for Illinois. I think Eaton Spence and he are going to be the starters until they're replaced, unless they're replaced by a couple of freshmen who are really coming on strong. Right. But it was interesting that he had the great kickoff return, but right after that he got beat on a pass, and after the game, Tim Beckman said that he made some mistakes, and that the only one that really graded out was Eaton Spence at the other corner in the secondary. No other secondary player graded out.
I found it interesting that some players didn't grade out. I thought maybe they graded everybody.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, they don't even bother to grade. You got to be so good to even get a grade.
Right.
So
there's a threshold.
Yeah, that's right. You got to get to a certain level. But that kickoff return was nice, although I hadn't seen many of those lately. It's been 5 years since A.J. Jenkins took one back against Indiana, and that tied a school record of a 100-yard return. It was nice to see a special team score.
I wonder now if he can be that guy on special teams. I imagine we'll see him fielding kicks a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. And he gave Illinois a 22-point lead in that ball game. It looked like it was over at that point. Mm-hmm. We got fooled, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We definitely did. Now, like to your point, Lauren, Coach Beckman said after the game, and he didn't really mince words on Monday at his press conference either, saying, I told him he's not really there. He's not a Big Ten corner yet. What does he need to do?
Well, I think that experience is the key. I mean, Illinois had 2 corners last year who played for 4 years, Green and Hawthorne. I mean, experience is absolutely the key to the secondary play, and that's where they're weak. They've got all young players back there.
Steve, what do you see from him? What do you think he needs to do?
I think there's a big upside with him. I like him as much in the return game as I do as a quarterback. I think he needs to develop in that area, but he does bring a new dimension, a different dimension, and some breakaway ability on the return game.
One of the many new faces on defense, because a lot of the guys we saw last year are now playing NFL football, some of them trying to make cuts.
And those guys, by the way, that you just mentioned in the secondary look a lot better when we get better rush on the passer.
That's right. Everything is connected, of course. Now, NFL season is here. The Broncos and Ravens kicked off the season Thursday. We'll find out who made the cuts, who's expected to even get some significant playing time, as our own Elise Menaker, we introduce her to the show. She takes a look at Illini in the pros.
Thanks, Matt. Illini in the Pros is brought to you by O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana. As you're scoping out Week 1 matchups, be sure to keep tabs on Illini alums making their marks on the big stage.
Michael Buchanan, who told you he was climbing the depth chart, the 7th rounder, made a name for himself, making the 53-man roster. In his final preseason game, the 22-year-old picked up 4 tackles and 2.5 sacks. He was excited to get the good news.
It was a great feeling. The first person I talked to was my mother, and then my father right after that, so it was a great feeling.
Akeem Spence posted impressive numbers in preseason and finds himself a spot on the Buccaneers. And according to Coach Greg Schiano, he's improving every day, but Coach hasn't overlooked the 21-year-old's rookie status. Place kicker Derek Dimke, though, telling a different story, a veteran stealing the rookie's spot. Ryan Lindell was released from the Bills, but wasted no time making Tampa Bay home, and that means former Illini Dimke gets the boot. The second year in a row he's missed making a squad. The potential difference maker, Dimke missed a 45-yard field goal attempt in the final preseason game. In Pittsburgh, defensive back Terry Hawthorne also got the axe, but ESPN reports saying he worked out for the Patriots Tuesday. Across the way, it's always a show in New York with the Jets, but tight end Jeff Cumberland is hoping to put on a show of his own, telling ESPN.com he thinks this will be his coming out year. Guys you won't see out of the gate: Chicago Bear Kelvin Hayden out for the season with a torn left hamstring. David Deal of the New York Giants sidelined for about 6 weeks after thumb surgery. And as for Whitney Merciless, reports saying he's back from a hamstring injury and ready for Week 1.
As are all of us, and through it all, we'll have our eyes on the Illini. Elise Menaker for Inside the Illini.
Welcome back to Inside the Illini here at Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, Eastern Illinois, one of those FCS teams that really rocked the college football world, spanking San Diego State. Let's go inside the Panthers with Eastern Illinois University.
Eastern Illinois traveled west for their 2013 season opener. The Panthers' second ever meeting with the Aztecs of San Diego State would be a homecoming for head coach Dino Babers, who is a San Diego native. EIU answered SDSU's opening score with a Jimmy Garoppolo to Eric Laura touchdown connection of 37 yards. The Aztecs added 2 field goals to round out the first quarter scoring, leading 13-7. The Panthers regained the lead in the second quarter with 2 Jimmy Garoppolo touchdown strikes.
Garoppolo, 2-step drop, throwing the fade for Laura. Got a touchdown, Eastern Illinois. Laura with his second touchdown catch tonight. Garoppolo, he's going deep. Got Gober behind the defense. Got it at the 30, 20. Keandre Gober on his way for the touchdown.
EIU led 19-16 at halftime. SDSU tied the game up at 19 early in the third quarter, and from there on, it was all Panthers.
Little's going to scoop it up on one hop at his 40. Broke tackle. Now he's got room to go at the 50. Shepard Little to the 45. Right sideline 40. To the 30. To the 20. To the 15. Broken tackle 10. 5. Touchdown. Eastern Illinois.
3 second-half touchdowns result in a Panther victory, 40-19. EIU's first win over an FBS school since 2004.
The young men's effort was unbelievable. I was talking to Coach Stu. He had gave me a call, and I was talking to him. I said, Coach, I just really wish you could see the game and see the effort that these guys put out on the football field for themselves, for Eastern Illinois, for the Charleston Mattoon community. I have not seen an effort like that in a long, long time.
Guided by 361 yards passing from senior quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, the Panther offense rang up 533 yards of total offense, while the Panther defense left its mark on the victory, forcing 4 SDSU turnovers. EIU now begins a stretch of 3 games in a row against Illinois schools, beginning with tonight's Tilton Carbondale against SIU.
We would like to go down there and find out where we're at as a team. And playing them after they've gone to an 8-point loss against U of I, after that game, we should kind of know where we're at. So we're interested going down there and finding out how we can compete, if we can compete, and see what the outcome may be.
The Panthers and Salukis will be meeting for the 68th time. EIU won by 21 last year in Charleston, but have lost their last 4 tries in Carbondale. Game time is slated for 6 p.m. The game can be viewed online at gosalukis.com. Reporting on the Eastern Illinois Panthers for Inside the Illini, I'm Brad Kupiak of WEIU.
Next up, our Pick'em, brought to you by Hickory River Smokehouse. We'll take a look at that next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini. Time for our Pick'em segment brought to you by Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, the building we are currently sitting in. Taking a look at some of the big matchups in college football. And first of all, we'll get a look at the standings. I did not have a good week last week. I was 1-2. I picked with my heart and not my head in the Boise State-Washington game. The News-Gazette representation, Matt Daniels got you guys a good 3-0 start there. Lauren, you're going to be trying to keep that up. Steve at 2-1 so far. Well, the picks this week, we'll start with a game, and I just feel bad for Georgia, the schedule they have to start the season. They get number 6 South Carolina. What are your picks for Georgia, South Carolina?
I can't imagine Georgia losing 2 games in a row. I think South Carolina's got a chance to win the national championship. But at home, I think Georgia will pull this one out.
I agree. Georgia was the only game I lost last week, and I had them winning on the road at Clemson. But like you mentioned, their schedule, 2 top 10 teams right out of the gate, and this one's a conference game, no less. I've got Georgia winning this game.
I'm going to have to go with Georgia. I don't see them losing 2 in a row. We're probably all going to be wrong on that. Notre Dame, Michigan is our next game. What are your thoughts on this one?
Michigan at home.
There you go. Simple enough.
I don't like either one of these teams. Could they play to a 0-0 tie in 27 overtimes and get a call due to lack of interest? I don't think so. I'll go with Michigan.
Both defenses looked all right, but of course, depending on the teams they were playing, I think Brady Hoke's got more options. I picked Michigan there as well. Got to stop agreeing here.
Why don't you guys go first, and then I'll disagree.
Okay, we'll do that.
One more game. We have Florida at Miami. Florida, a couple-point favorite. Miami just hanging on the outside of the AP poll at the very least.
That game is on the road for the Gators. I'll pick them to win on the road at Miami.
Man.
Is that where you were going?
That's where I was going. I'll pick Miami just to be different.
Okay.
Oh boy, already dissension. Well, I'm going Florida on the road. So Steve, we're tied at the hip here. We got to beat Lauren. We got to gain some ground on the News-Gazette here. Well, right here, this is where we turn to Facebook. We get some fan interaction, and we partially answer this question, and we can elaborate a little bit more. But Eric asked us, will Aaron Bailey get more reps as the season goes on? I think we can give a yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty wide open question. I guess the bigger question is, I think the answer is yes. The bigger question is the circumstances.
Correct. Absolutely.
What happens between
if
now and then.
Illinois is winning football games, it's a different story than if they're losing football games.
Yeah, but part of me thinks even Nate Shieldhouse is comfortable with the fact that there's a changing of the guard here, and he'll want Bailey to get some reps throughout the season. Now, if they are winning, I know Nate will want to be the guy toting the rock a little bit more. But to your point,
I still think O'Toole's the number 2 quarterback though at this point.
I do too.
At this point.
It'll be interesting to see how that progresses as well. Well, next up, our final segment. The minutes tick away here until kickoff against Cincinnati. What do we know about the Bearcats? What do we think Illinois addressed in between week 1 and 2 here? We'll find out next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Inside the Illini, the final segment here. Well, about the time last week when Illini fans were sweating a 4th and 3 by Southern Illinois, the Bearcats of Cincinnati were putting the finishing touches on Purdue, but the Bearcats think they can do that again.
Football, and here come the Bearcats.
Cincinnati's proof that a youth movement comes in all shapes and sizes. Both Tim Beckman and new Cincy head coach Tommy Tuberville lament their inexperience. Both with 6 starters listed on their depth charts that are either freshmen or sophomores, and toss in a couple of junior college transfers, and the rosters don't look terribly different. But this relatively young crew looked every bit the team that won at least a share of 4 of the last 5 championships in the Big East when they beat Purdue 42-7 last week.
And the cupboard isn't bare. I think Mark Antonio started it off long time ago, and they've just continued to build and build and build.
They've won a lot of games, and a lot of it's been on defense.
And they did it with their backup quarterback. Now, to be fair, Junior Munchie Legault was a starter last season before losing his job to Brendan Kay. A true quarterback battle during camp. Kay came out ahead of his teammate on the depth chart, but sat last week due to a shoulder injury. Tuberville now seems happy with either.
They both bring, obviously, a unique skill set, but I think the common denominator is they both throw the ball extremely well. Obviously, Munchie's probably a little bit better athlete, But both guys, have tremendous arm strength.
The Illini won't get much from the Cincinnati game tape against Purdue. This week, Tuberville said they only opened about 60% of the playbook. They didn't need to get much more complicated. The Illini expect to see all of it today.
I thought Purdue, shot themselves in the foot a lot, which ended up hurting them. And we can't afford to do that.
We got our work cut out for us, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Guys, the University of Cincinnati of the American Athletic Conference. A whole lot new to learn this season.
Yeah, this is a team trying to get out of the AAC.
Right.
And really they're fighting for their life because they're one of the top 2 or 3 schools in the country that would like or have a shot at getting into the Power 5 conferences, which are going to be, as of January, we'll find out, but I think you're going to see a big change in the rules, and you need to be in the Power 5 to make any money.
Right.
So Cincinnati's fighting for their lives in that regard, and they've got a good football team, and they're trying to ride a good football program, as Louisville did to get in the ACC. They're trying to ride their football program to get in a power conference, maybe the Big 12.
They're coming off a couple of good seasons, back-to-back 10-win seasons. They got a new coach, Tommy Tuberville, who returns to the area where his wife is from, so he's back in the Queen City there, and got a couple of quarterbacks that we'll see action today. One makes the all-name team right out of the gate. Munchie Legault.
Munchie Legault. That's one of the best names in college football.
He's pretty good. He had a good game last week. He got the start. Brendan Kay was really recognized as the starter. He was about 90% healthy last week. Tommy Tuberville, early in the week, had not stated who the starter will be, other than they'll both play.
The thing to watch about Cincinnati is the way they go after the football. They try to tackle the football. They try to get the ball away from the other team, and sometimes you give up more yardage doing that, but it's fairly clear that they're coached to go after the football.
Right, SIU did a little bit of that. It's when they were rushing Riley in the backfield. You could see that the guy was going for the football, so maybe trying to address that issue a little bit. But like you said, Tuberville keeping it pretty close to the vest. At the time of this recording, a starter hadn't been named. Everybody seemed to think it was Kay's job before his injury this year. But what does Munchie Legault bring? Well, what kind of wrinkle does he add to the game plan for Illinois?
Well, he's a rangy passer, and I think that probably Kay is more of a passer than Munchie is, but Munchie started early last season, and then Kay started late last season. I don't think it makes any difference. I don't think it's going to change their offense at all.
Munchie's a better athlete. He's more dangerous out of the pocket. Kay's more of a drop-back passer, as Lauren alluded to, but Munchie can make the plays with his legs, and he did some of that last week.
Cincinnati's first trip to Champaign, so it'll be interesting to see how they do in a new hostile territory. The Illini defense was a big topic earlier in the show. Always wondered all week why the first half was so different from the second half. Do we know why that was different, and how can they address that?
Okay, one thing is that when a team gets behind, as SIU do, they're going to put the ball in the air. Mm-hmm. This is Illinois' weakness. Maybe they were feeling out Illinois early in the ball game. I don't know. I think that as the game progresses, it gets looser. You always see more passing, particularly by the team in behind.
And teams scout each other. They knew that there were questions about Illinois' defensive line and the secondary as well. And when they started getting some success in the second half, obviously you're going to go after that. I go back to the heat. I'm not using that as an excuse, but I think it was a factor.
It'll be
of course, it was hot on both sides of the field. I get
right,
that.
Exactly. It'll be a little bit cooler, but you're still going to see a lot of that heat and humidity today. Daryl Hazel, we talked about Purdue's struggles, and the offensive game plan didn't seem to work, and communication was bad. With Nate at the helm, do we see a repeat performance from him? Can we see similar results that we saw last week?
Well, I don't think that you're going to have the same results against Cincinnati's defense that you had against SIU's. Right. I think definitely Illinois is going to have to mix it up. They've got to get a little running game going, but no, I don't think that it's going to be as easy. Absolutely not.
Do you think Bill Cubitt liked what he saw, and how do we like him so far? How do we grade him out?
I give Cubitt an A. What do you?
I do
so
too.
Far?
And he talked a little bit about Nathan Shieldhouse not running the ball much. They didn't have any design plays for Shieldhouse to take off and run. You know, those are in there somewhere. How often they want to do that is yet to be seen, but they want to kind of take care of him. But they need to get Donovan Young and Josh Ferguson going a little bit out of the backfield.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Young. He seemed to not be hitting it as hard as at least he was talking about in the preseason. He wanted to be north and south. He wanted to hit the ball.
He's got to be a better runner than he showed in that game. That was disappointing.
Right. All right, well, guys, a 10-3 team last year was Cincinnati. We'll see how good they are this year. If that Purdue game was just an aberration, it kind of a measuring stick for Illinois here. Another bigger name program. They're not going to be favored for sure. I think Cincy's got a couple touchdown favorite here, but we'll see how the game goes, because that does it for us here on Inside the Illini at Big Ten Football. The game starts in just a few moments. We'll catch you back here next week, same time, same place. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Go Illini.
Thank you for watching Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football, brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors, O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana, Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, and WAND.